is really try and make it sort of achievable or tenable, so that you can put your arms around it and really understand the possibilities. So starting off, just a little bit about myself. As Don mentioned, I have the honour of leading Saffron and have done for the last 12 years now. But prior to that, I was a partner at KPMG and was sort of growing up through the consulting fields, then being in-house at BP and Lend-Lease, having global and regional roles. So I've seen it on all sides of the fence, if you like. I'm really pleased to be co-hosting this with Sam. So I'll let Sam introduce himself.
Yeah, hi everybody. Thanks so much for having me. Thanks, Don, for the kind and encouraging introduction. And as I've seen the names of the people lining up in the participants list, I can see a whole bunch of people whose names I recognize and who are probably greater experts than I am. So if you know who you are, if you've got any insight and would like to drop it into the chat, then that would be great. And yeah, it's lovely to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, it'd be great to have an interactive conversation. Okay, so what we're going to really talk about today is, can coaching help with the skills challenge? Sam's going to talk about how the technology is coming into play. And then first he's going to look at the maturity model. And then he's going to show you some actual use cases of where technology is used. And then I'm going to show you something that's slightly different and what the art of the possible is in using AI in coaching. So starting out then with how can coaching help? But first of all, over to you, and using the chatbot, how are your organisation using coaching for skills?
Nuri, I'm really looking forward to this. And if you're a familiar person, if you're a part of the LSG team or you've been on these webinars before, you'll know that big box underneath the slide there is for answering the questions. Please put your answers in here to the question, how does your organization use coaching for skills? And you can see there are some suggestions on there. You could be using it for top leadership, and of course, typically it is the leadership of organizations that do get coaching. It could be that line managers are coaching teams themselves. It could be everyone in the organization is receiving coaching of some sort. You might say, well, we're not, and we don't really care about it. We don't see the need for it. Or you might say, well, we're not, but we need to be coaching. There's a whole range of options there. It's not really a poll. Those are just really prompts to get you thinking, how are you using coaching for skills at the moment? Already thoughts come in. Michael saying to support leadership and management capability. Mm-hmm. Classic use of it, Michael. Martin saying for leaders, people on succession plans, teaching line managers coaching skills to coach their teams. That's Martin. That's great. At some point, if you've got time, Martin, I'd love you to throw some more into the chat about how warmly the managers receive the idea of coaching training, because I think we all know that it's a great skill for line managers to have. I'd like to know how receptive they are to it. I can see, because I'm the host, I can see who's typing. I can see Matthew Ash and a couple of other people are typing at the moment. Gabrielle says for senior management to offer feedback, insights, and guidance. So already, Sam and Nuri, we can see that there's the first on all three of the answers we've had so far is that the coaching has been directed at leadership or senior management or leaders, as Martin puts it. That is quite common, isn't it, Nuri and Sam, that it's the people who are the leaders in the organization who are more likely to receive coaching first?
Yeah, absolutely. The idea is that, it's for strategic leadership. It's, it's a VUCA world out there as such. So, being able to be agile and sort of leading for the future is an absolutely necessary skill. So yeah, it tends to be, because it's so cost prohibitive, it does tend to be situated at the top end of management.
Now, Celeste is saying that coaching in our organization is very important, and it's for all levels of leadership. And it starts with the leading yourself. So obviously, Celeste is coming from an organization which has quite a mature approach towards coaching. It seems to be quite embedded for all levels of leadership, Celeste is saying. Formally at exec level, informally at lower levels. That's interesting. So Laura's creating a difference there, Sam, between formal coaching and informal coaching. Is that something, you're a certified coach, that you'd recognize as common in most organizations?
Yes, I think it's interesting use of language, isn't it? Because I'm not sure how you can do coaching formally or informally. You know, it's a particular craft. I expect that what that means is that the coaches that the executive level are receiving are accredited coaches, and they're doing it through a contracted, boundaried, having formal coaching sessions. Whereas at lower levels, what we're expecting is, well, we are manager as coach. And so we've got coaching skills, and it's part of having a coaching culture in our organization, but it's not formally contracted coaching. And over the last several years, over the last 5 or 10 years, there's been this phrase, the democratization of coaching, that has grown up to take the idea of being able to deliver formal coaching in the way I've just described it, away from that elite few, the privileged. Peter Hawkins has got a great quote that he describes it as it's highly expensive personal development for the already privileged. I think that's quite accurate. And so using technology to be able to deliver some of that scale is obviously a really helpful way to make that dream a reality.
Sorry, we got a quote from. Sorry, we got a question from Sylvia Adams saying lots of people cannot hear. I just want to check. I'm not getting any feedback from anybody else, Sylvia, that anybody can't hear. So I'm just going to. I think. Okay, everyone's now saying audio is fine. Okay, let's carry on. Good reflection there, and we'll put a link in to that quote in a second, Sam. Thank you for coming back on that, Sylvia, to let us know that's now working. Matthew's saying we're starting to utilize communities of practice, which would then open up the door to more collaboration. Very revealing answer, says James. Coaching is higher cost only. Okay, that sounds fascinating. Look, there's a lot we could dwell on that, couldn't we? But I think what you're doing is you're setting up the scene here, aren't you, Sam and Nuri, for a quite coherent view of how coaching is being done today in organizations, which is that it's being used in some organizations. It's quite sophisticated, but largely it is reserved for the higher up people in the organization. There we go. So do you want to push on?
Yeah, and I'd like to add, the question, I suppose, is it measured in any way in terms of performance, even if it is at the higher levels? But that's something that we can come on to later.
All right.
So moving on then, if you actually need a business case for widening coaching within the organizations that you work for, then 67% of HR leaders, according to the HR Research Institute, really do say that it leads to improved performance. And it's not just about performance. So, people are staying in their job longer. There's an increase in productivity and just job satisfaction, which obviously keeps them there, which is very important these days. And obviously organizational strength in terms of collaboration, working together, innovation and creativity. New revenue streams, using that coaching model in their workplace to essentially overcome problems themselves that they're facing in the workplace. So the benefits of coaching are really well documented now. So if you want a business case, there it is. But if you need an even stronger case, you can see that high-performing organizations really have a strong coaching culture. And as a result, externally, customer satisfaction increases, regulatory compliance increases, people are tied to their employer. Profitability goes up, and who within the business environment doesn't want that at the moment? And obviously shareholder value as well. So we've talked about the other things that it already does. What do we then think that effective coaching is, and how is it used within these organizations? So the key thing is that it has to be consistent. And when I talk about consistency here, I'm not just talking about the fact that it's got to be spaced or anything like that, but the quality of the coaches is really paramount, as well as making sure that it actually happens, and there is consistency with that. Regular, with even executive coaching, there can be the space of a month or 2 months between meetings. And that means that any actions that are done in between, although well-intentioned, don't necessarily always happen. And then there is, structured, what Sam actually talked about is, there is a framework, there is an understanding of what the roles and responsibilities are. And this is where sometimes in the informal coaching sense, these things don't necessarily work in practice. Managers are time poor, even with the best of intentions, those coaching conversations don't happen, or the actions between meetings don't happen. The biggest thing that's not on here is that, real coaches, and this is where Sam was saying that it is an art, as a coach, you have to take your personal opinion away. And it's very difficult to do that for people, because we, naturally we have biases, we have prejudices, we have judgment. We are being asked all the time in our work to come up with solutions. And that's not what coaching is about. It's about getting the individual to articulate their own solution to their own problem. And that's where it really differs. And this is where line managers can find it difficult to become good coaches. So how can technology help, not just with scale, but also quality? I'm going to hand over now to Sam, the expert, to talk about that.
Great, thank you. So what this is a model that I first brought out in a book from a couple of years ago called How to Thrive as a Coach in a Digital World. And to be honest, it's the starting point that I tend to end up using when I'm working with organizations around how they're using coaching to increase, or how they're using technology to increase the visibility and impact of coaching that they're using. So hopefully you, as I'm talking through this model, then you'll be thinking, oh, that sounds like my organization, or oh, that's somewhere I'd like to be getting to. So it's a 5-stage development model at an organizational level. And the first stage is when coaching happens on an ad hoc basis. So every so often in the organization, somebody discovers that coaching exists. Maybe it's because there's a leader who has experienced it at a previous organization and then comes in and has identified somebody with high potential in their team and feels like, oh, I'd love to introduce you to the coach that I used to work with. Or maybe there's a new person in the learning and development department who has discovered coaching and loves that and would like to start that. And so it just comes out of conversations. There's no control around it. There's no process. Coaching just happens, and it happens in little pockets, very inconsistent across the organization. It's quite common for that to happen. Right up at level 5, in the utopian dream of where everything is operating at an optimized level, this is where coaching processes are consistent across the entire organization. There's a continuous improvement mechanism. So drawing back on what Nuri was saying around being able to measure what's happening in coaching and being able to see what the impact is. How are people complying with the processes or not, and what's happening to address that? What extra insights are we getting through coaching that we'd like to normally get through some kind of employee engagement survey, but we know that those have got issues around when they take place? And particularly, how are we using technology to be able to deliver that at scale to reduce the risk and increase the efficiency and all of that good stuff? That's the dream. To get there, it goes through multiple stages of maturity. The first stage that you reach after it's been ad hoc is that there's a level of repeatability in it. So this typically looks like an individual who loves coaching so much that they're willing to put the effort into introducing some consistency. And so they end up with a list of trusted coaches, which often exists in their head. And people start to discover that, oh, well, there are ways in which I can start coaching to be introduced. You know, it will happen through a performance review meeting, or it will happen because somebody's been on some kind of workshop and coaching's been mentioned, and then they follow it up themselves. So it's still a little bit inconsistent, but there's a way in which, if you find the right person and you know how to trigger that process, that it will happen well. Stage 3 is when that becomes defined. So then, in addition to there being a person, we recognize there's key person risk there. We introduce some documentation around it, maybe even some technology that allows us to track what sort of coaching is happening across the organization, and to a certain extent, what impact it's having. Somewhere between stage 2 and stage 3, you might see the introduction of a spreadsheet, which looks at the list of people who have asked for coaching and the list of coaches that have been assigned. It may even give you a level of insight into how many sessions have taken place. That would feel quite mature. At the top end would be some kind of technology platform, and I'll show you an example of one in a moment. The 4th stage is then called it measurable. So it's gone from defined to a point at which the coaching processes don't just exist, but they've actually been tailored to the organizational context. So the great example of this is, how many coaching sessions should you have in an engagement? Well, some people will say you should have 6, because 6 is the number of therapy sessions that the NHS set based on their budget way back when, and coaching has kind of come out of that. So we've gone with 6 as well. But there's no reason why it couldn't be 1 or 2 or an indefinite amount, depending on the particular purpose for the coaching in that instance. And taking that coaching wider than just being for that individual and turning it into an organizational development tool, and using technology to get real insights into that, like that are starting to add some value, giving greater insight. It's part of that maturity journey that takes you through to that stage 5 of optimized. So where do you think you are on the scale? Don, I think this is passing over to you. Thank you.
Time for a poll. We're going to ask you to, after Sam's explanation there, stick where you think you are on that choice of 5 options: ad hoc, repeatable, defined, measurable, optimized. And once you've done that, you might want to reflect on your vote in the box in the middle. Why did you say you are ad hoc or repeatable or defined? Nobody's gone for optimized yet. Most people are pretty ad hoc. I notice there isn't a level 0, Sam. There's no level that says, well, we just don't do it at all. Is that deliberate?
Oh, I mean, obviously, I need to update the model, don't I? In my next book, then there will be a new model.
Cut the book! Stop the press! Yes, I hate to think that you haven't, in all of your years and certification and training, thought about this. Obviously, it's included. But I'm just wondering, if you think if you think you're not doing coaching and it's a quite deliberate choice, you might want to put that in the middle and explain why. Look, we can see the results there. The results are that over half the people here are in the ad hoc category. Andrew is giving me a slap in the face and saying, Donald, I'd be really surprised if there was 0 coaching taking place in organizations. Well, I think you're right. And I think that's Sam's polite response to me. It conveyed that idea that there is no organization which there is no coaching. You're right. That's why I said, if you're deliberately not doing it, but there are no organizations like that. Interesting that the second most popular was defined. I would have expected the pattern to be a bit different. Sam, what was your view? Is that the sort of distribution of votes that you were expecting?
I think probably people are being a bit hard on themselves. And so I would have thought there's a bunch of people who have said they're ad hoc because, you know, they're humble and they're self-aware and always looking to improve. And probably if I were to come in and do my gap analysis, then I would probably end up with a curve that looks at a lot of people being in that repeatable stage. And it's likely that the people who are on this webinar today are those key people who have the knowledge. And so when coaching happens, then they're quite heavily involved. And
people like Lauren, who says, look, we're definitely at the defined level and we know that there is room for growth. I think that's really interesting. That is your view, Sam, that once people start down the road here, they tend to get to the point where they learn more about it, understand more about it, and realize that there is room for growth, realize there are other places to go.
Well, I think that it's one of these things. It's like in coaching, one of the first things that happens in a coaching session is you become aware of something that you weren't aware of before. And when all that you have ever seen in coaching is somebody has a need for coaching, oh, well, I know a coach, I'll connect you, and then go off. I hope you have a nice time. I'm sure it'll be good. I enjoyed it. Then that's just what coaching looks like. When actually,
Sorry, I
when
shouldn't
you've
laugh,
seen,
Sam. I shouldn't laugh, but
well,
it's so
you know,
recognizable.
it's
That's the
true.
trouble. Yeah.
Exactly. So that, and when you see an organization using coaching at scale and being able to get insights from it, often through a supervision, you know, a coaching supervision network. I mean, sorry, this is going inside. I'm such a nerd about coaching. There's so many things that you're able to get at scale when using coaching to develop culture, to change leadership style, to increase productivity, and to hit the bottom line. That's been demonstrated.
Yeah.
Then you start to discover, oh, wouldn't it be great if we got a little bit more governance around all of this so that we can start to get, you know, to increase visibility around that impact.
Thank you for that. And you're not a nerd, you're an expert, which we shouldn't shy away from. A lot of chat. Also, the word mentoring has crept in here. Do we want to go into that at the moment and quickly draw a dividing line between it, or do we want to accept the reality that in most organizations the two are very blurred?
Yes, it's a bit of a challenge. I was talking to a client this morning actually about this, where I wouldn't even describe it as a spectrum. It's like there's this interconnected web of therapy and consulting and one-to-one training and coaching and mentoring and all kinds of other things. And sometimes when you say, I'm doing some coaching, or I would like some coaching, then it's not entirely clear what you actually mean by that. And so I think there's a bit of a tension there, where it's nice to have clearly defined boundaries around what we're doing, and it's good to know the purpose of it and what the intended impact is meant to be. And it's important to hold a bit of unknown and allow it to be emergent and follow some intuition to do what's right for the individuals and the organization in that instance.
As always, we ask a question and we stimulate a lot of discussion out of it. Gabrielle, thank you for your question about AI. I've dropped that into the questions box. It may be answered by the time we get to the end of this presentation. If not, we'll deal with it at the end. We have people here who are really quite, I think, mature and developed in their view of coaching. William's saying, well, we do a strong focus on coaching culture and career coaches. The challenge is, as you say, Sam, about the consistency. And I think that it's something which, as you make your way along this maturity model, it becomes increasingly apparent that consistency and standards and processes and the ability to understand what's going on is important. It's not just a matter of doing the ad hoc stuff. Okay, look, we need to move on, but let's look at Celeste has put a big comment in. Our L&D teams service a variety of audiences, and therefore there's a defined industry norm or a coaching culture. It provides all the tools. That's why I place us at defined level, but there's certainly room for improvement on all levels. If I think about certain business units within our organization, and that's a fair point, isn't it, Sam, that if you've got a sufficiently large organization, they're not all going to be coaching at the same level, are they?
Yeah, and that's true, regardless of what sort of topic we're thinking about,
Sure.
coaching in this instance. And I think it's good to pull out that technology is a way to accelerate you to defined, because if you're going to introduce a piece of technology that's following some processes, then you have to have defined processes. There's no option other than to do that. Technology, I mean, maybe in 5 or 10 years, then maybe it will, but technology as it exists at the moment can't just appear and start doing stuff. You need to tell it how things are going to operate. And so it's a good way to know that you're at defined is to introduce some technology that's kind of managing the process.
Yeah, I'd be a bit wary if technology did just show up and start doing stuff without being instructed. I'd be a bit concerned about that. Really useful discussion that. Sean, I take your point about definitions having value, but also being potentially creating divisions and barriers. And I quite agree. I think everyone would, that we need to, at some point, think about developing the individual. It's a good point. Shall we press on?
Sure. Yeah. Great. I'm going to do a whistle-stop tour through this now, because I'm quite conscious of where we are in terms of time. So I'm just going to highlight a couple of technology concepts that exist within organizations around coaching. The first of these, they've got all kinds of names, so I'll call it coaching management platform. Coaching management system is the title that we've got there. This is a screenshot from a tool called Delenta. There are plenty that are out there, and what they do is they force that process to happen within a system. And so that means that the coach and coachee only interact, as far as coaching is concerned, through the system. It tracks how many sessions that they have had and allows you, as the head of coaching or somebody who's got a level of interest there, to have an insight into what's actually happening. And so that's what I mean in terms of being able to move it into that level 3. This forces that to happen, because you need to be able to then know how many sessions have happened, how many are due to take place. When it comes to, supplier management, dealing with lots of independent coaches can be a real challenge from an administrative perspective. Stick them all in one system and then it starts to do things for you, which is helpful. A second big sort of technology that organizations are using and have been increasingly using over the last few years, particularly as we went into the lockdowns and we had to start delivering coaching remotely. Oh, what was the system called, please? The one that I mentioned just then is Delenta. Probably the market leader is called coaching.com. But there are plenty of them out there. I mean, honestly, there must be 20 or something that are operating that have got some level of market presence. So if you're interested, connect with me on LinkedIn. Let's have a conversation about that one, and I'll send you some. The second big topic would be digital coaching providers. So in the olden days, remember 2019, that kind of thing, when you people in person, in those days, then what you would do is you'd contract with a series of independent coaches, and you would have to find ones that you trusted, and you'd work with those only, and they'd be on this trusted list. And then there were some bigger players where they would operate a help desk, basically. You call a number and say, I'd like a coach, and then they've got a black book, and then they'll do the matching process, and you're kind of going through a broker. And then along have come digital coaching providers. And so the 3 big ones here that you may have heard of, BetterUp, CoachHub, and Ezra, they've got a big global pool of thousands of coaches who are subject to various quality criteria. And then you use the technology to do the matching for you. The costs end up being around about the same. So we're not quite seeing that efficiency of scale at the moment, although hypothetically it could be. What it does is it takes away that administrative burden, and it brings with it the value of that level of insight. So you're using technology and getting the benefits of that, and you're being able to deliver coaching at scale globally across time zones. It's difficult to do otherwise. Moving the conversation on to what we're here to talk about, which is AI delivering coaching itself. What you can see on this little screenshot is a tool called Coach Vici, which was invented by Professor Nikita Blanche, who's based in South Africa. He's done a lot of research around this, and he has developed a tool following a framework that he's designed called the AIC, which essentially follows some kind of GROW model. I'm sure you're familiar with GROW model. It helps you to set a goal, define what your reality looks like, come up with some options that help you to close that gap, and then settle on which one you're going to do and what actions you're going to take before the next time. And it will ask you a series of questions. There's a level of machine learning in here, but it's basically a decision tree that takes you down this route. And he has done some peer-reviewed research which demonstrates how effective this kind of tool is, in that over time, there's the green line that you can see there is people who are being coached by a human, and the purple line is people who are being coached by the tool, Coach Vici. And over 8 months, the tool is more effective at keeping people accountable for setting goals and setting actions, and then keeping to those, developing the right habits. Whereas a human coach does a little bit better at first. Maybe it's because of the relationship. I mean, all of this is speculative, I suppose. But then after time seems to level off a bit. 8 months in, hasn't had the same impact. And perhaps the reason, this is all just an idea, but perhaps the reason is that the AI will very strictly stick to the model and keep you accountable for things that you have talked about. Whereas a human coach, and I count myself very guilty of this, I'm a little bit more, there's something new and shiny. And so as a coachee comes in and discusses something which is maybe a little bit different, I've already talked about that first thing and want to talk about something else, whereas a robot will not do that. And you can see the reference to that research there. And if you're interested, it's well worth reading. Back to Nuri.
Thank you. So I don't know if some of you found it exciting or strange that the chatbot with those really simple, effective, reflective conversations or guided conversations could really be that effective. But what I want to show you is how we at Saffron are using AI with a bunch of other technologies as well to essentially democratize coaching, as Sam put it. So this is something that is scalable and personable and measurable. So I will ask Don to share the video of Ada. And right at the beginning, this is a video, so I will be stopping it at certain points just so that I can talk over it and explain it. Otherwise, it will go by really quickly and you'll miss most of it. So be prepared for that. But to start off with, Ada is what we call it. And you can see that this is what we're really trying to get to. It is on mobile as well as desktop, so entirely accessible. And this is what it looks like. As you can see, we are going to be guided by these coaches through that performance improvement and skills development. So you can choose your coach from any number, or you can you can swap these out to whatever is your target audience. So if you've got a younger audience, a slightly older audience, you can change these avatars the way that you'd like. So let's see what Ada sounds like.
Hi, I'm Ada. Nice to meet you. It would be great to work with you. Thanks for choosing me as your coach. I'll be on hand whenever you need me. I'll also keep you on track, reminding you about the actions you've set yourself and support you all the way to achieving your goals.
That is the key thing about Ada, is that it will take you on that journey whenever you want, 24/7, and essentially handhold you through your own personal journey.
First things first, what shall I call you? You can speak to me, record a video, or text me your response.
So you can see here the ease of use is that you can use voice, video, and or text. So it understands, in inverted commas, what is being inputted, and so that you can have a real conversation. So a lot of people say using AI takes out the human element. This is our way of putting the human element in, having those reflective conversations, it feeling as natural as possible, and helping you to essentially move along. So Ada has a skills assessment. You might be able to see there, it's got sort of all of the soft skills assessment in there. It's got the universal skills builder assessment in there, which is quite behavioral. So it sort of talks about actionable things that you're doing. But this can obviously be swapped out with any organization's skills assessment. The Universal Skills Builder, if you're not familiar with it, is sort of endorsed by the CIPD and a number of other partners. What we've also done is put in here digital skills as sort of assessed by the Department for Education. So we've combined the two skills frameworks to kind of cover every individual's sort of most important skills in the workforce right now. But as I mentioned, this can be obviously swapped out with your own. So moving on. You can assess yourself in terms of grading, and you can see that there's 4 levels of mastery. And these are all the different skills that are in the build currently. The great thing about this is that you can then match those skills and what you want to choose to do to the available training resources that are either in your own learning management system or content libraries. And you can also match them to anything else that is outside on the web, should you wish to do so as well. And by doing so, we can then create personalized pathways with those targeted learning resources. So it's really making use of what you've got already and bringing it to the fore and creating, if you like, a roadmap for the individual to move those skills forward.
So you'd like some guidance with setting a goal? Great, that's what I'm here for. Are you ready to get started?
So Sam mentioned the GROW model, and what Ada does is actually coach you through making a goal, a SMART goal, using that GROW model, because what we found in all of the work that we've done is that individuals find this element particularly difficult when they're doing it on their own. So with Ada, essentially you get walked through without being told. It's the GROW model, if you like, but it makes you reflect on all of the GROW. And again, these conversations can either use the GROW model or any other model that you want to use, such as Transform or others. The best thing about it is that obviously the goals are then inputted into the same platform, but then can also be measured and replayed back to the individual.
Hey, I noticed you've missed a couple of goal deadlines, so I just wanted to check in. Is everything okay?
So on the basis that there is a lot of data in there, you're putting in your goals, it can nudge and remind you about fulfilling those goals so that you're on that continuous learner journey. And this isn't used in isolation because we don't really want to take the line managers or away from their responsibilities in terms of coaching or mentoring, nurturing the individuals in their team. So this helps line managers actually become better coaches as well, because they can see how their team are responding, whether they're stuck, and whether it's the right time to actually intervene and have a coaching session. So it can work with internal coaches as well as external coaches to give a lot more data and a lot more insight. And obviously this can be aggregated at the company level as well, so that the organization is getting insights as to how their people are developing. Because Ada has semantic analysis, so through the voice and text recognition, it actually detects what your emotions are in terms of positive and negative. And the whole platform, the science behind it, is really around building up these four main things which help people in times of trauma actually build their careers. And this is around curiosity, concern, commitment, and confidence and control. So there's 5 there. The additional one is from Jenny Bimrose. The other 4 are from Mark Savikas. And so what this is really doing is essentially trying to build that personalized, scalable, and effective solution for increasing skills within the organization. So I'd like to just pause there and stop the video and just ask you what everyone's thoughts are.
I'm very interested to get a view of people's thoughts on this. So I know, Noura, that you've been doing this for a long time. I became interested in the application of technology for coaching in 2018 as a result of something I saw in an event in the Netherlands, which was a very, very simple exercise of sitting in a confessional booth stay with me, it sounds weird, sitting in the confessional booth with 6 prompts on paper. And I had to read these and then respond to them through the confessional curtain to somebody on the other side. And it was explained to me this was part of a test, a survey that was being done, which was had these prompts delivered both in person like that, but also delivered through technology. And they'd found that technology was actually, people had found it as effective, if not more effective, than doing it in person. It's the simplest algorithm, 6 things, one after the other, prompting reflective conversation. From that, so much else has come. I've seen you working on this at Saffron for 2 years, but more than that, in this field, and I've been very impressed with what you've been covering. So a quick bit of reflection here. Now, Eva's saying, I'm in favour of a combination of human plus tech coaching, little smiley, huggy emoticon. Jason says, I feel the simulated person is unnecessary. It's a bit uncanny. Jason using the word uncanny in the sense of the uncanny valley, where something looks real but isn't quite real and produces a reaction. Interesting to have semantic analysis on the spoken word, but the transcript's limited. And is this so there's a reaction there to the technological approach to it? I mean, we'll get some reaction from your clients in a minute, won't we, Nuri, about how they've
yeah, absolutely.
Gabrielle's saying, isn't it a bit scary that that technology is more effective than the person? Well, I think Sam's explained it. It's not that the people are less effective, but they're more perhaps, well, Sam's theory is that they are more likely to go off piste. What's your view of the reaction we're getting through here? Because I really like the way people are responding here. What's your view, Nuri?
Yeah, I think some people have said that the sort of character is not necessary, but you'll see from the results that a lot of other people think it is really quite personable and makes the experience even better. So I think that's one thing. I think it's sort of horses for courses as far as that is concerned, but we can certainly switch that element off if a generated person is not needed. What I think is really cool about the platform, though, is the voice recognition and the text recognition, but especially the voice. And the reason for that is that when you're really trying to use reflective conversation, often by the individual actually voicing what they have been feeling internally, it really brings perspective out in the open and it really articulates their feeling. And then when they have someone who looks like a person responding to that, for some reason, the way that the neurology works in your brain, it seems to make a real difference. So I would say that the combination of the avatar, if you like, and the voice together is a really powerful combination.
Really interesting. There's a lot of really good comment here. One very quickly, Nuri, both Anka and Andrew are asking whether they use the coaching model beyond Grow. I think you said that it could. Anka raised another question, which was, did you do A/B testing with and without an avatar?
We didn't do A/B testing with and without an avatar. We did in the prototype because obviously in the right at the beginning, we always use design-based thinking principles. So we always create lo-fi prototypes. But there was an upsurge in just warmth and engagement with using the avatar, but we didn't do, if you like, proper A/B testing. It was just through the engagement levels during the prototype modeling.
You might want to do that because Lauren, I love Lauren's comment. I'll be interested to hear what the people think. I'm not sure how I feel right now, and I think probably a lot of people feel the same way. Shall we move on, because we're going to get to Q&A very shortly. And I think that would be a good place to get to. But please do keep the chat coming. We're going to be handling the questions now very shortly. So let's wrap up the presentation.
Thank you. So yeah, let's have a look at what that pilot really gave in terms of results and outcomes. As you can see, we can measure the hard data. So 79% out of nearly 500 people completed the action plan. And there were 628 actions actually completed, which I have to say is probably higher than what we see generally in organisations. And then in terms of the soft data, what I was sort of talking about, what we're really measuring through the sentiment is that increase in control. And as soon as you feel, in control of your own life, your own career, your own learning, that is obviously very positive, but it also spurs on you to actually feeling something that you can manage, that you can actually fit in, and that you want to. And then obviously that also looks at that increase in confidence, which is huge in the platform. Within sort of 45 to 50 minutes, the confidence increases from 36% to 92%. Confidence in about the future and about their learning pathway. That's the figure there. And also reduction, so feelings of stress, feelings of real concern diminish, 27% down to 10%. So really good, some good data there in terms of statistics over just a short time frame of 6 months. And just to say that this was actually independently reviewed by the Learning and Work Institute as well. In terms of actual qualitative feedback, you asked about the AI video coach. Well, 80% actually felt supported by it. They felt it was an engaging experience. For the skills assessment that we had, it was a 100% sort of positive experience and rated. Again, the training recommendations, 80% rated high. The action plan, 100%, and obviously used very well as well. And then the dashboard, relaying back how they were progressing back to the learner was really well appreciated as well. But let's have a look at what comments users had. And really within that 6 months, you can see transformation happening with individuals really taking on that learning and actually shifting into new roles. Really sort of working in terms of that reflection, the user experience, finding it easy to use, being comfortable talking about things that are uncomfortable. And we find this a lot with the use of digital as opposed to a human. You can say things without fear of judgment. And so remaining comfortable is a really good way of then being able to articulate what you're feeling, and then more importantly, taking action. And, the action plan, I think this person recognized that there wasn't an awful lot of science behind the action planning and the development plan, but it was kind of very neatly designed. And I think that's where we are. So I think one person wanted to ask, so is it, what is the purpose of this particular seminar? And what we're sort of trying to say is that essentially it can be used effectively to upskill and reskill. You talked about the research that we've had on a practical basis with clients, and Sam's have talked about the peer-reviewed research. Live coaching is obviously excellent, but it can't match the scale and sometimes effectiveness. And AI and digital enabled coaches can really help collaboration and accelerate upskilling whilst being scalable and personalized. You can get a lot of emotional intelligence and data that you don't necessarily get through traditional coaching models. And the fact is that it's able to be restructured to accord with how any organization would want to use it is really important as well, because that's something that we really truly believe in. And it's already been used. And I think that, as new language models with ChatGPT, etc., get better, get safer, this is a really exciting area to be using for coaching.
Let's go to the wrap up. Goodness me, we've got a lot of questions, and we have roughly 6 minutes.
Oh.
So let's try and be as effective as possible. Gabrielle said, "Can I test this tool to see how it works in real life?" And the answer is, if you scan the QR code or use the first link on the left-hand side, yes, absolutely, that's possible. Saffron have set up a demo for you, or you can contact Nuri. I said Nuri or Sam, it's just Nuri via info@Saffron Interactive. Let me put in LinkedIn profiles over in the left-hand side, while at the same time you can also let's look at some of the questions here. There's so much that came through. Let's start off with Mauro Mortale. I think this is a good question. How quick are the responses from Ada delivered? The sentiment analysis can require quite a lot of processing power. So are you sitting there waiting for her or him or her to respond?
No, not really. It's seconds. It's not sort of say something, wait and see. It's really about the power of your broadband rather than the power of the AI.
Okay, I'm going to use that in answers to my wife in the future, explaining that's my delay, it's my processing speed. Richard Whiteside was wondering if this whole thing with VR would be even more powerful. Sam, you responded to that. What's your view?
Yes, I think to introduce it into VR right now, there just isn't the scale, and what this is solving is scale. But Apple next year, they keep saying Q1 24, they're going to be releasing a pair of smart glasses that have augmented reality built into them and the ability to make phone calls and connect to the internet without a need for a smartphone. Right. And when Apple do something, then consumer behavior shifts, and then Samsung and Xiaomi and Huawei and everybody else will suddenly have their own. So by the end of 24, I would expect there to be moving into an early majority of people starting to use AR as an option to meet. And by the end of 25, I would think it will, it'll be a genuine option, just like video coaching was before 2020. So it might not be majority of cases, but the idea of meeting people through an avatar rather than seeing a video of them on the screen will become relatively normal. And once that's been normalized, then the idea that behind that avatar is a human or an AI actually becomes a bit less, it's more illusory. So there's a lot to be watching in that space. I would keep an eye on it.
Thank you for that, Sam. Anka asks, did you train an existing language model coaching, or did you develop one on your own?
We used a combination of both because the original model that we used was during COVID to, you talked about democratizing and sort of only serving the very privileged, Sam, but what we did during COVID was actually serve those people that were most at risk from the digital disruption as well as COVID and losing their jobs. So no, we used a combination of the two.
Please do look at the resources box on the left-hand side. It's scrolling down because there's quite a lot of stuff in there. We've got the papers. We've got a link to that Peter Hawkins document with the quote in it. We've got a link to your book and Skills Builder and the Grow model. Great question from Laura. Following up from that, what types of topics and skills and behaviors were people being coached on? Does this technology work better with some than others, Nuri?
So there wasn't a set pathway. It's really about the skills and behaviors that they choose. It's more about guided conversations around what they have chosen. So there's no limit. We're actually extending this to mental resilience, to financial resilience, to it can also talk about pensions and retirement options, all of those kinds of things. So the technology as a base is able to be reused for all sorts of things.
People are starting to drop off. Thank you for that. I'm going to try to, if it's all right with you, Nuri and Sam, because this has been such a good session, to try to continue for just a little while longer. If you do drop off, please, before you go, do use that URL on the left-hand side to get your demo, or contact Sam and Nuri to stay in contact. I think this is one that's not going to go away. William asks, great idea to include the stress voice recognition, but how does it respond to natural variation in voice patterns and expressions? And by the way, what about racial, cultural, neurodivergent differences?
Yeah, so neurodivergence was very much taken into account, especially with, everything from the colours that are used, so contrast. It worked. We tested this on a group of people with on the autistic spectrum, at all levels of the autistic spectrum. And they were the ones that actually found it the most realistic, and actually benefited the most from it. So we feel that we've taken account of a lot of those things. Where in those places where we think there will be a natural language processing issue, we have used deliberately multiple choice options to carry on the conversation and not to break the illusion, if you like, for self-reflection.
Thank you, Nuri. It's really important. Sam, do you have any reflections on this idea of being able to recognize, without breaking the illusion, I think it's a great way of putting it, to recognize people's, the divergent ways people have expressed themselves just in terms of voice?
I mean, I suppose the technology that's underpinning all of this in terms of the voice recognition is constantly improving, and so that is going to be going only in one direction. The idea that there is bias inherent in data sets is a real one, and it isn't that we can get to a point where there is no bias, because humans are biased and data sets are biased, but to recognize that and just continue to be aware of it, particularly as we're thinking about something like coaching. There's a lot of people who use the word coaching and they're not actually talking about coaching. We talked earlier around mentoring and training and consulting. Well, it wouldn't surprise me if Microsoft have now got hold of OpenAI and GPT is going to suddenly come out with some sort of well-being or career development tool that they will call coaching, and it might not be. So I think let's just keep an eye on where things are going and hold on to our good foundations well.
Yeah, that sounds sensible. I think we may be almost there. Sarah Tyndall, let's wrap up with Sarah Tyndall's comment. I'm sorry if I've missed anything. Sarah Tyndall says, this webinar has moved me from skeptical to open. I look forward to learning more at Learning Technologies. Well, Learning Technologies looks forward to welcoming you, Sarah, on 3rd and 4th of May in London at Excel. I think we're pretty much there. Probably time to wrap up. It is lunchtime in the UK, just after lunch in Europe. And thank you very much for attending, everybody who's been able to be here and sharing great reactions, thoughts, and input in the chat area. I want to say a last thank you to Nuri from Saffron Interactive and Sam Isaacson. Well, we can add something to your list of credentials now: independent consultant, expert, author, certified coach, and self-described nerd. I've written down here because that's how you talk about yourself in the middle there.
Absolutely, yeah, I earned that one. Yeah, definitely.
And nothing wrong with it. Be proud of it all. Thank you so much. Any last words you want to say, Sam? Then Nuri. Sam, any last words to encourage people on the path of thinking about coaching in different ways?
I mean, I just think technology is continually becoming everywhere, and so I think it's important for us to pay attention to what's happening so that we're involved in that journey as well. And anybody who's interested in continuing the conversation, please do get in touch. It's been a real privilege being here today. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you, Sam. Nuri.
Just to say, AI is not a nebulous concept anymore. It's here and now. And this is a way of harnessing it for good, for increased performance. So, yeah, look forward to speaking.
It's really well expressed, Nuri. We've gone from that weird idea that was all over the press 5 years ago of AI to something that's really quite concrete and happening in our daily lives. And yes, you're quite right. It can be used for good in this way. Thank you so much, Sam and Nuri. Thank you so much. Look forward to being in touch with you again. And thank you everyone for coming. Look forward to seeing you in the next Learning Technologies webinars in a couple of weeks' time.